In a 10, how did William come back? Now, don't get me wrong, I know this man always comes back, but I thought that this time it was really over. But somehow, without any ritual or any kind of warning, William is sitting in his own freaking recharge station. That makes me sick to my stomach. The thing is, how is this a thing? How could this even be possible, since it looks like his body is still a part of the suit? You can see like his human jaw, like a set of code getting put into a robot made up of other animatronics. Okay, that's fine with me. That kind of makes sense. It makes sense in the FNAF sense. However, this seems to actually just be the Springtrap suit, just even more destroyed. How? I mean, we saw with the end of Fazerquest's The Man in Room 1280 story that William ends up exploding into like a giant pile of human goo, which presumably happens after the FNAF 6 fire. So how could he come back? Well, my best guess is that this is again an issue of release dates. The game originally was meant to come out in 2020, but due to COVID, the game was delayed until early 2021, and then, you know, it released late 2021. And since Bunny Call, the book where The Man in Room 1280 was released, came out in September of 2020, it's safe to say that perhaps the game was supposed to release closer to this date, and it could be explaining what happened to William after Security Breach rather than after FNAF 6, since again, he burns in the Security Breach. In a 9 relationship, Gregory, our player character in the game, is certainly a mysterious kid, and Vanessa, the night security guard who's also Vanny, is just as confusing. But at least we know more about her story, being our player from FNAF VR. But what the most mysterious thing about this game is the relationship between Gregory and Vanessa. Like, what the heck is up with these two? Vanessa spends the whole game trying to lock Gregory in the security room, and then Vanny comes at us to kill us, and as she actually does do in the worst ending. But then, after curing her, we don't even ask questions. We just go eat ice cream on a hill with her and the Glamrock Freddy head. So if we're so quick to do that, there's no way she's a stranger, right? It genuinely seems like they're family, which would explain why he knew something was off with her, but she can't be his mother or sibling because when she locks us in the security office, she tells us, quote, "We'll wait until your parents or the police arrive." If it was a sibling, they would have said our parents, or even mom and dad. But with her saying your parents, that means that they aren't hers, making our options limited. And she's definitely not our mom, since she would have said your father if she was, but she isn't. So we don't really know, because she also seemingly doesn't know Gregory's name until it starts coming out of his Faz watch. Or at least that's how she describes knowing this kid to Freddy in Parts and Service. So, in an 8 multiverse, the FNAF multiverse is a thing. And honestly, even without the fanverse, it's canon that there is a FNAF multiverse just due to the multiple endings of the games. So ever since FNAF 3, there has been multiple Earths in the FNAF canon. One where the bad ending is canon, one where the good ending is canon. And Scott just chooses which one we play through. This time around, he chose that the canon universe would be when we fight with Springtrap. However, that keeps 5 more endings with their own canon universe. Unfortunately, the Princess Quest ending is not the canon ending this time around, but I mean, like, I can see why, since it would really leave no antagonist for us to face in the next game, since we wouldn't know about Springtrap hidden in the basement. But even still, I wonder if this section of the story would be canon in the fanverse, since they have their own version of the first game, FNAF Plus. So if they have, in the story at least, a Security Breach Plus, which one of the Security Breach endings do you think would be canon? Be sure you let me know down below. And at 7, in-universe games. Something we've been wondering since the release of Help Wanted was which games are the in-universe games that Scott's stand-in made in-universe. Well, I think Security Breach may have given us an answer, albeit not definitive. While exploring the Pizzaplex, you can find a load of arcade areas and arcade machines featuring various animatronics. However, at least one of them in particular caught my eye, Mangle's Quest. And if that doesn't sound familiar, lucky you. I'll remind you that it was one of the mini-games present in FNAF 3 that you had to beat and glitch out in order to get the good ending of FNAF 3. So basically, this game kind of confirms the theory some had about the 8-bit minigames, or at least some of them being the games that Scott's in-universe counterpart made. This Mangle's Quest being turned into an arcade cabinet actually confirms that, like, kind of though, like not completely, but partially at least. Unless the point of this cabinet was to reference the minigame and has no lore implications, but there should be lore implications because it's a detail in the FNAF game, which would then, I guess, make it canon. God, I hate this series, but I love this series. And at 6, Vanny's ending? In the canon ending to the game, the one where we fight against William Afton in the form of Springtrap, we don't see what happens to Vanny. Well, yes, Springtrap might have been dealt with. We don't know if that releases Vanny or if she's still under his control. Plus, we don't know just what she was doing while all of this was going down. Was she just chilling upstairs on her phone? Like, when there's a canon ending, you expect the main antagonist of the game to be there, right? So when Freddy and Gregory are sitting on that hill chilling, what comes next for the series? This is a question I genuinely don't have an answer to, and I don't think that I could have one. There are so many possibilities now that I think it's practically impossible for me to guess, and I think that's the point though, since there is someone taking over from Scott for the next game. I'm sure that Scott wanted to leave them the ability to go wherever they wanted next, whether that be with William as the main villain, hence his physical form, Vanny being the villain, hence her not being there at the end and not dying, or the blob, since, you know, it was introduced and then intended to be revealed in the next Fazbear Frights, but delays made that just ruined. Yeah, but that's my guess as to why the ending is so obscure. Halfway through into number 5, Glitchtrap. One huge question about this series that I have now that Security Breach is over is what the hell was the point of the story of Glitchtrap? If William had a physical form in Burntrap, like a form that legit contained his actual body with his human jaw being visible, why was he sentient code? Or was that even him? Like, I get that his inclusion was to add a story to the VR game, but how was this possible if Afton still had a physical form? That seems practically impossible since, to be fair, the rules of possession in the FNAF universe are pretty well established. You gotta die. So what's the deal here? It's so confusing and concerning that we know that this game takes place after Help Wanted 2, thanks to the Fazerquest arcade machines, which, thanks to one of the lore duffel bags, is described as being ported from a mobile game. And Fazerquest made its first appearance in Help Wanted's mobile version as a way to include the Glitchtrap and the 16 tapes thing, since they couldn't really include the full normal game, because, you know, an iPhone isn't as powerful as a computer or a console, no matter how much Apple claims that it is. So what's the point of Glitchtrap if Afton had a physical form? How is it possible? And for the blob. Now, this blob of black goo seemingly has no introduction in this game. It just kind of appears alongside Burntrap in the ruined area under the Pizzaplex. There used to be a pizza place there until they built over it, but that doesn't explain a giant goo tentacle monster, right? Like, I thought this was a normal game, not something based on a raunchy anime. Well, the thing is, this monster has been explained, although this wasn't the original intention. The original intention of this game was so that we'd be confused about what this black blob was until the release of the final Fazbear Frights book. Since I've said it so many times, even I'm starting to get sick of it. The game was supposed to come out shortly after the release of Fazbear Frights number 5 back in 2020, but due to delays, it couldn't come out until after number 11, which is where the epilogue that revealed that the black tentacle blob is in fact Circus Baby, or I guess technically Elizabeth Afton, William's daughter, who also betrays or abandons her father in the books so that she can live another day, but was ultimately the one controlling everything. So yeah, this blob is almost certainly Elizabeth, which kind of cheapens this ending because I can see all of the blob explained videos that we would have had if we didn't already know. But I will admit, Amanda did predict that Elizabeth would be coming back in this game, so good on her. You should subscribe for that. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, who is Gregory? While we know that Gregory's name is Gregory, that's basically all we know about him. We don't know why he's at the Pizzaplex, we don't know why he knew Vanessa was evil, we don't know why he doesn't go home when you leave alone in the worst ending to the game. He sleeps in a cardboard f***ing box using newspapers as a blanket. But he's also wearing Fazbear clothing, which means that he can't really be homeless, right? I mean, like, gift shop stuff is expensive, especially for a company like Fazbear Entertainment, which I'm sure only cares about money, because this is like the 14th time they've reopened, and kids are still getting killed. So why is he able to afford Fazbear shoes and a Fazbear shirt when, if he was homeless, getting that stuff at a thrift store, even from Target, would be cheaper? I feel like any kid would know that. He could also be an orphan, but wouldn't he have run back to an orphanage if he, like, when he escaped? Even if he left the orphanage on his own and ran away, he wouldn't know, like, wouldn't he know that it was safer to go back there instead of hiding in a cardboard box? Plus, this dude is capable of ordering robots to kill Vanny. Like, straight up, this kid killed this woman by ordering the bots to disassemble her. And while he didn't, like, stab her or, like, do anything, he was still actively willing to kill her. So, who the hell is this messed up kid who can fit in a stroller, form full sentences, drive a van, and use jumper cables on a car battery properly to reboot Freddy? I swear, this is like a 6-year-old kid with, like, 40 years of life experience. How could that happen? I wonder. And ultimately, in a number 2, 2 vannies, the rooftop ending is unlocked by exiting the Pizzaplex through the prize counter and then clicking leave. This will prompt Freddy to burn the place to the ground and for the two of you to escape onto the roof. I'm guessing Freddy's original plan was going down the fire escape, but when Gregory gets to the roof, Vanny is somehow there waiting for us. She grabs us, but Freddy with his new eyes is able to see her and then runs at her, grabs her and jumps off the roof, causing them both to fall. They both seemingly die, and we take off Vanny's mask, revealing Vanessa behind it, as we all figured. We look confused and the comic ends, but before actually ending, another couple panels are shown with Vanessa standing on the rooftop, looking down at what just happened. Yeah, this is probably one of the most confusing endings, since it shows us that there are apparently 2 Vanessas. And while we seemingly knew about the whole double life thing, like we hadn't exactly seen the 2 characters in the same room, okay? So we thought that there was only one. And in the Princess Quest ending, we seemingly save Vanny, and then the Vanny mask is gone. So how the The simple answer is that this may not just be 2 Vanessas, but it could simply be Vanessa's soul looking down at her body. We know that souls are actually a thing in this universe thanks to FNAF 3's cutscenes where Purple Guy gets springtrap. I mean, like, those souls had to have physical forms that caused him to freak out. It's not like he felt cold and was like, oh shit, I gotta get into my murder suit. This is probably just Vanessa regretting all the things she did as Vanny, even though she didn't want to. Hence the fire behind her, because Remnant needs to be burned in order to just actually be gone. And finally, in at number 1, is Afton dead? For f***'s sakes, I never thought that this was a question I would have to ask again, but lo and behold, the stupid furry somehow made his way back with a physical form, even though his body was supposed to have exploded and he was supposed to be dead, hence the whole ghost spirit sentient code crap from the last game. Now clearly, I'm very upset about this, because I've made it a point to clearly describe how Afton needs to die and stay dead at this point. Okay? The whole he always comes back trope is becoming way too overused. Like, at this point, it is the power of love thing from The Flash. Like how they defeat every villain with the power of love. Yeah, that is what this whole I always come back thing is at. I hope they cast Sean Bean as Afton in the movie so that they can kill him off permanently. Cause that's what happens every time Sean Bean's on screen. But after the canon ending, the blob ends up grabbing him and then we don't know. There's unused death animations for Afton in the game files, but they're unused, so we can't really take them as canon yet. But in the books, Elizabeth does leave Afton for dead, so maybe there is still some hope here, and the blob stops him from leaving and like maybe assures his death this time because she kind of grabbed him by the neck, so like maybe she like hung him for good measure. God, I hope so. Please let Afton finally be dead permanently. The worst ending. The worst ending is actually the second one I got, with the Fazerquest ending being the first. But this ending is just if you leave the Pizzaplex at 6 AM through the front doors. However, this is labeled as the worst ending for very good reason, since after escaping, Gregory obviously runs away from the Pizzaplex, but he doesn't seem to go to any house. Instead, he finds a cardboard box in an alleyway and uses newspaper talking about the children who've gone missing at the Pizzaplex as a blanket, with a silhouette of what looks a lot like him in the bottom left corner, might I add. But it doesn't seem to matter though, since a red light comes on and we see Vanny's shadow appear in front of us. She finally ended up getting us. Now, this actually has a little bit to unpack, because firstly, if Gregory has a home, why didn't he run back there? I mean, like, yeah, it's later and he's been up for a while, but even if I was stuck in a pizzeria for 6 hours and almost died multiple times and was finally able to escape, I don't care if my house is on the other side of the planet, okay? I'm booking it as far as I possibly can. The fact that he hides in a box and then uses a newspaper as a blanket to sleep. Also, he uses that absolutely horribly, might I add. Like, bro, just turn it 90 degrees and you'd actually have a decent blanket. It would cover your body. And like, maybe Vanny wouldn't have found you that way. Like, I know that it was for readability in the ending, but whatever, okay? I don't care. Him hiding in a cardboard box, though, seems very similar to how I thought of homelessness as a child. Just like, grab a box and use it as your shelter. It's also how cartoons seem to depict it a lot. This leads me to believe that he has no home, only adding to the confusion and mystery of his character. Like, how the ever-loving hell does that work? Like, even if he is an orphan, he would have been taken to an orphanage. I don't know how many kids actually run away from orphanages, cause like, it's either that or this. So, I don't know, it makes who he is even more of a mystery, since we know nothing about him other than he probably went to the pizzeria to try and find the missing kids, since he's using it as a blanket. Next up, the good ending. The good ending is probably the least lore heavy of all the endings, which makes it a simple explanation. With a level 7 security pass, or I guess 7 level 1 passes since we collect a new one every time and don't really get a better one, maybe. If you go to the loading dock, which is next to the trash compactor that you would have found if you went to the bottom of the map instead of through L chips when first entering the atrium to leave, there was a door that previously couldn't open. But this time, Gregory and Freddy will escape in a van, as long as you have level 7 security. Gregory will be driving the van, but Freddy will eventually run out of power. However, Gregory will actually solve this power issue by loading up Freddy with the charge from the car's battery using jumper cables. Now, how Gregory, a 6 or 10 or whatever year old kid, has any idea of how not only to connect the jumper cables properly to the battery, then connect them to Freddy is one thing, okay? Like, maybe he's like a kid who really likes cars. But this still adds more confusion, cause like, how does this little kid know so goddamn much? If he's around 6 like I've been thinking since the start of the game, cause like he can fit in strollers and is so short that he can't drive the go-karts on his own, there has to be something more going on here than him just being a gearhead. Like, how can he fit in a stroller but also reach the pedals for the frickin' van, dude? What? Next, Princess Quest. This is probably my favorite ending in the whole game because it's something that I was cluing into before I read anything about the other endings to the game, which I only did once I actually beat it because I wanted to make videos like this. Princess Quest ending has to be set up for a decent amount of time before you actually finish the game, since the player needs to locate and beat all 3 Princess Quest arcade machines. The third one is in Vanny's room above Phaser Blast. The second is where you find Music Man Spider, or DJ Music Man for those who aren't cool like I am. And the final is in Roxy's Raceway, in like the beauty salon thing, which I didn't actually check because I didn't think that that would be a thing. Now, you have to beat Fazerquest to be able to get this ending because you need to discover the room that has the third game in it. So you need to find Vanny's room, and this is what triggers the Fazerquest ending. And as I was thinking, you need to beat the first game, and then beat the second game, and then choose the Vanny ending and play the third one. This will result in the player actually saving Vanessa, and thus finding Vanny's mask on the floor. How did that save Vanessa, you ask? Like, all we did was beat arcade games? Well, it's actually fairly simple. Help Wanted. If you've seen any of the videos where I discuss the endings of Help Wanted and then how we complete the puzzle and like the final battle and we get locked behind the door, you'll know that I said that us doing that puzzle thing was just to distract us so that William had more of an opportunity to shut us away in our own mind. And seemingly he does that. And Princess Quest actually proves me right, since at the end of Princess Quest 3 you open a giant door with a large keyhole surrounded by glitching cracks. And in Help Wanted, we get sealed behind a door with a large keyhole along with cracks and handprints. This with the obvious connection via Princess Quest to Help Wanted because it was ported into the flat mobile port of the game because they couldn't actually include Glitchtrap due to size limitations because you know it's a phone game. So us opening that door is releasing the player from Help Wanted, who now is confirmed to be Vanessa, from the wall that Afton set up. Since after this door opens, we see her mask on the floor and even sit on a hill with Vanessa and Freddy's head in the final shot of that ending, which is similar to the final shot of the canon ending. This is truly the best ending, but it's unfortunately not the canon one. Next up, Fazerquest. While having this ending unlocked is required for the Princess Quest ending, that's because you need to access the Princess Quest minigame. But without playing the other 2, you can't play the third. So this ending actually ends up killing Vanny. Since without the game, you have to make your way up to her room and hit the button that turns the animatronics against her. And since she has just had them disassemble Freddy, we as Gregory tell the animatronics to disassemble her, which results in the first killing to be committed by an actual kid in this game series, because they literally tear her to shreds. We don't see her corpse, which leads me to think that maybe it would have been too gory or because it would have been revealed that Vanny was an animatronic, but I don't think that it would have been the latter. I think that it just would have been too gory because like Freddy is absolutely destroyed when you see that. That would have been not pretty. But more on that other idea later, because there's another ending that indicates that there's more going on here than you realize. Get it? Because that's what Vanny says in the trailer. Next, the Springtrap ending. The Springtrap ending, or the canon ending, or true ending, whatever you want to call it, is unlocked, as I figured it was going to be, by finding the secret elevator and the secret section in Roxy's Raceway. It's down the stairs next to where you find the test driver head. Instead of actually getting the head, you just go to the left and go down the stairs. This requires your Freddy to have the Monty Claws, however, so this is potentially unlockable right after installing them, since that's when you're given given the mission to go to Roxy's Raceway. You can also do this if you choose to stay after completing the game, however that will result in you having to deal with Monty's boss battle in one go without saving, since save states are disabled after you could have escaped, so it's less likely that that's gonna happen. After making your way into Burntrap's area though, Freddy will be taken over by Springtrap using code, or at least he starts to try to take over him, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using 3 monitors, and you gotta press the buttons to burn him. The player will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that are coming for Gregory and use the doors to temporarily lock them out. When Springtrap is finally burned though, the blob, which was the tentacle monster from the very first Freddy and Friends cartoon, will attack him, making sure that he doesn't get free. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and sitting on a hill together, and I think my original theory about this was right. This tentacle monster was never revealed or never had anything else that had to do with them, but after this game, the final Fazbear Frights book would have originally released, so it would have been after this, but due to delays, the game came out after the final books were released that showed us what the tentacle monster would have been about, and it's how it's in fact Baby, or I guess Elizabeth Afton, who stopped her father but probably will be the one controlling Vanny now, since in the canon ending, Vanny doesn't actually die, and I think that's worth noting. And finally, the rooftop ending. The rooftop ending is unlocked by exiting the Pizzaplex through the prize counter and clicking leave. This will prompt Freddy to burn the place to the ground and for the two of you to escape onto the roof. I don't know what Freddy's original plan was, because I don't think he would fit on the fire escape. Maybe he would just jump down and then you'd take the fire escape. But when Gregory gets to the roof, Vanny is seemingly there waiting for us, somehow. She grabs us, but Freddy, with his new eyes, actually sees Vanny now and jumps with her off of the roof, causing them both to fall. They both seemingly die, or I guess Vanny dies and Freddy is just inoperational, and we take off Vanny's mask, revealing Vanessa behind it. We look confused and the comic ends. However, before actually ending and showing us the final news clipping, another couple panels are shown, with Vanessa standing up on the rooftop looking down at what just happened. This is probably one of the most confusing endings since it shows us that there are apparently 2 Vanessas, and while we seemingly knew about the whole double life thing, we hadn't exactly seen the 2 characters in the same room again, so we thought that there was only one of them. And in the Princess Quest ending, we seemingly save Vanny, so what the hell is going on here? The simplest answer has us sounding like a middle school English teacher, with symbolism being always an option in this series. And with Scott, I think that this is probably the right place to talk symbolism, because it's FNAF. Unlike Shakespeare though, he didn't mean anything. Now, this is probably not actually 2 Vanessas. It could just simply be Vanessa's soul looking down at her body. We know that souls are actually a thing in this universe thanks to FNAF 3's cutscenes where Purple Guy gets spring-trapped. Those souls had physical forms that caused him to freak out. This could just be Vanessa regretting all the things she did as Vanny, even if it was unwilling. This could also just be more than that as well, where there could legitimately be 2 different Vanessas, with one either being a robot or from another universe, since we have the whole Fazbear Fanverse initiative, and the multiple endings indicates that there are multiple universes already, or they could just be twins, but I think it would be more cool if Vanny is a robot. I hated this theory in the early days, mostly because people were treating it as fact. However, in the previously discussed canon or Springtrap ending, we did have to fight off Springtrap, but we have to do it as Gregory since, like I said, he takes control over Freddy, but why didn't he take control over us? This man, more than anyone, should know that you always gotta get rid of the kids, because they're always gonna be the ones to screw you. So why didn't he just take control of Freddy and keep us inside, or take control of both of us if he could? I mean, he had Roxy under his control in that same scene, right? So we know that he can control multiple things, and I think it's probably because no matter what, he can only possess robotic beings. Combine this seemingly obvious limit with the fact that Vanny doesn't start bleeding after hitting the ground, and you have some solid evidence, but I'm sure that it was just her soul looking back at what she did, fire surrounding her so that she actually makes sure she dies. Because Remnant can only be killed by fire.
Number 10. Corruption. One of the things we learn in our fight against William Afton is that he seeks to corrupt other animatronics, even good animatronics like Glamrock Freddy, who is pretty much our ally throughout the game and ultimately wants to help us get out of the Pizzaplex safely. In the final boss fight, Afton in his current in-game form will attempt to take control of Glamrock Freddy, and we have to try and harm him to prevent him from doing so. You know that he was successful when Freddy's eyes glow purple. If this happens, he will attempt to harm instead of help Gregory, aka you. Number 9. An army of animatronics. While you can try to prevent Glamrock Freddy from becoming corrupted, there are some animatronics that you can't really save from Afton's influence. Eventually, Glamrock Chica, Roxanne Wolf, and Montgomery Gator will all join him in his attempt to attack Gregory. The Blob, or I guess the Freddy amalgamation if you prefer, also seems to be in league with Afton, at least initially in the game, although they are not specifically controlled by Afton, which means they either simply want to join Afton's cause because they believe in it for some reason, or have their own reasons for lashing out at young Gregory. The other animatronics don't seem to be in control of their behavior and are more like William Afton's puppets, completely controlled and willed to cause harm by Afton himself, likely going against their own initial programming. Number 8. Hunter. While later on Afton mainly relies on his influence over the other animatronics to do his bidding, initially he was involved, possibly directly, in taking out any Fazbear employees who came to investigate just what he was up to in the tunnels below the Pizzaplex. Large quantities of power were being drained down there, and when employees were sent to investigate, none of them managed to ever return apparently. This implies that they were all killed, likely by Afton himself in his new form as Springtrap, or some lesser form of him perhaps as he bided his time becoming Springtrap, improving his appearance and gaining more and more power. Improving his appearance. Ugh. It's not really improved, he's pretty gross. And as he gained more and more power, literally with electrical power, and on an influential scale. Number 7. He survived. So obviously if you have played Security Breach or watched any of your favorite YouTubers or streamers play it at this point, you know that William Afton managed to survive and make it into the game. Not only that, but his physical body even manages to somehow be around. I know, I'm like, isn't this thing completely destroyed at this point? Apparently not. It shows up once more fused with an animatronic suit, managing to have survived all the awful things that have happened to it, like being spring-locked and burned alive. I think he was burned alive twice actually, and also possibly possessed or cursed, depending on which continuity you subscribe to. Though it should be noted that this is probably the most decayed and worse for wear we've seen William Afton look in the flesh. Number 6. Springtrap. This version of William Afton is known as Springtrap. Springtrap is an amalgamation of a bunch of different animatronics, and I believe we actually found the name Springtrap through hacking the game and through looking at the file names. Springtrap is actually a withered spring Bonnie suit that also has endoskeleton parts from Springlock, Glamrock, and Nightmare animatronic builds as well. Of course, the corpse of William is also permanently bonded with this suit as well, and much of his corpse beneath is visible because of just how withered the suit is. Very little of the suit is still visible, and you can even see all of Afton's skeletal looking gum exposed bottom jaw, as the suit no longer has its bottom jaw attached. Ew. Number 5. Trailer lines. When fans looked into the files belonging to Springtrap within the game, they learned that there was actually a ton of content stored there that simply wasn't used at all in Security Breach, at least as far as we know right now at this moment in time when I'm recording this. However, this content was designed and programmed into his character, it just was never used. Among this content were 2 lines featured in one of the Security Breach trailers that many fans suspected belonged to William Afton himself. Well, it turns out that apparently we were right about that. However, while the lines were found within his files, they were never uttered in the actual game. Either they were put there with the intention of being used, but an opportunity never really presented itself that made sense, or they were used and then later they were cut from the game for some reason. Among them, I believe, was the line, "You will do as I say, you will bring me what I want, and if you fail me, then you will, both of you, burn." Unfortunate, because that line was honestly something I wanted to know more about in terms of how it played into the plot and then the overall lore of the franchise. Like, what does William Afton want? Who is burning? Which 2 people? Is there more than 2? Number 4. The ruins. Where did William Afton as Springtrap come from? Well, it seems in the game that Vanny was tasked with recovering his body, digging up the ruins of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, which the Mega Pizzaplex happens to have built on top of. Recruiting the Glamrock animatronics against their will, she brings them to the ruins of Freddy Fazbear's and has them dig something up. Likely that something is William Afton's tattered corpse. It's gotta be really tattered at this point. That is how he is able to return with Vanny's help and some convenient construction with the Pizzaplex being built on top of the pizza place. Although this likely was also part of his greater plot as Glitchtrap. Fazbear may have still held the deed to that land and, you know, they decided that they should just make use of it instead of selling that lot and then buying a new one to build on. Makes sense. Although I imagine they would have had to buy more land around it as well, because the Pizzaplex is massive. Number 3, from whence he came. While the blob initially seems to be allied with Springtrap, as it also strikes out at Gregory, we later learn that this might not actually be the case. The blob is the one who ends up grabbing Springtrap when he tries to escape as the cave and tunnel system begins to collapse, depending on which ending you get and what's going on. It seems the blob either did not want to be left alone or actually has feelings of pain and vengeance attached to William Afton and Springtrap. Springtrap's fate remains uncertain, but it's definitely implied that he is killed during the cave-in, and likely so is the blob. Of course, this is the unkillable and seemingly immortal William Afton we're talking about, so there are also many reasons to believe that this is not the end for him, as, you know, he always comes back. Always. Number 2, death animation. While Springtrap being overtaken by the Freddy amalgamated blob / Elizabeth / just the blob, whatever you want to call it, and one of the endings seems to imply that he has died, or at the very least has been defeated, we don't actually get to see his death happen. We just see him basically like pulled away by this blob as Glamrock, Freddy, and Gregory manage to escape while the underground tunnel and cave system caves in. However, through fans hacking the game, they've claimed that they have found some unused Springtrap files, and within that an unused death animation for the character. There could still be a way to unlock those unused files, of course, as it's still early days for this game, and there are likely tons of clues and hidden lore still left uncovered as of yet. After all, this game is massive, but the other option is that Springtrap's death was initially going to be shown in one of the endings, but was ultimately cut to leave it more ambiguous as to whether or not he might return, and whether or not he actually survived. Perhaps they wanted to kill him off initially, but then decided they'd rather leave the option open for Afton to return once again. I personally think they maybe were like, we could make Vanny this big character and then like say goodbye to Afton, and then they got cold feet as they were getting near the end of that. They're like, oh, people won't like it if Afton's gone. Of course, all of the people that have played the game are like, more Vanny, less Afton. Number 1, no jump scare. Although all the other animatronic antagonists in Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach have their own jump scare if they manage to catch you, Springtrap is the only animatronic who doesn't seem to have one. This is likely because, well, he doesn't really catch you himself, but instead gets other animatronics to lash out at you, preferring to use them to get to you instead of pursuing you as Gregory himself. This just goes to show us how much this character has evolved and really grown in terms of his power, becoming the mastermind who pulls the strings as opposed to doing his own dirty work. And I know what you're all gonna say, he's always been the mastermind, Amanda. You're right, he has been, but I just mean, remember initially he used to kill people? That was his thing. And now he's like, nah, everyone else just kill people for me. I'm tired. I'm like, look at me, I'm barely a human anymore. I'm just a little bit of bone and a little bit of gums. That's about it.
And at number 10, in-universe games. The knowledge that Scott Cawthon's in-universe counterpart has made games about the Fazbear restaurants in the FNAF universe has been driving us, or more particularly me, crazy ever since we learned about it in Help Wanted. Literally Help Wanted's opening scene. What games are the ones he made? Were they the original FNAF games? Does anything we've done up until this point in the games actually matter? Well, it seems like Security Breach might have actually at least kind of explained it, with a single machine known as Mangle's Quest, which, if you don't remember, is one of the mini games that you had to play in order to unlock the good ending of FNAF 3 and the Happiest Day minigame. I guess technically though that has even more implications. If to release the souls of children we had to actually like glitch out an actual game, but that's a discussion for another day. I'm not talking about that now. Unit 9, toy animatronics. Has Security Breach actually wrapped up the story of the toy animatronics? It's possible. I mean, this idea has been out there for a while, really ever since Glamrock Chica was revealed, but could the toy animatronics actually have been reused or repurposed into the Glamrock animatronics, or at least parts of them being used? And actually it would make sense, considering how these animatronics seem to also have like a security database. Oh my god, wait, no, they actually do have a security database. Freddy straight up pulls Gregory out of his stomach and then like looks at him and says, I cannot locate you, there's no profile for you. So yeah, they have a security database. They don't like seem to have one, they actually have one. Just like the toys from FNAF 2. They would scan a criminal database to see if anyone was willing to commit murders.
but with facial recognition and conveniently the same glitches that allowed them to misidentify William, allowing them to not identify Vanny, since Freddy is unable to see Vanny without Roxy's eyes. Which begs the question, could the other animatronics see her? Or like, is it just Roxy? And if the last versions of the toy animatronics were so terrible at their job, because I mean, like, at this point, they know they were. And I guess, like, maybe they were like, oh yeah, no, it's because William programmed them, so that's why they were terrible. But like, still, why would you reuse that? Why would you risk it again? That seems like a absolutely abysmal idea. And an 8 alligator mask. Now, my original idea was that the man in room 1280 took place after FNAF 6's fire, and that's how William became Glitchtrap. However, it's seeming more and more that the man in room 1280 actually takes place after security breach. After all, I mean, like, it would explain why the one you should not have killed is wearing an alligator mask, since it would be Monty if this does take place after, since there wasn't really an alligator animatronic beforehand, and there's no way that an alligator mask is Happy Frog, okay? Just saying. And considering how Freddy runs off with Gregory at the end of the game, Monty would be left to run the show. I mean, we actually like see this happen in a newspaper article at the end of the good ending. The one where you go through the loading dock that required level 7 clearance, and you just like, Gregory somehow drives a van with Freddy and then uses the battery to jumpstart Freddy. Yeah, that ending, we see that since Freddy's gone, Monty ends up running the show. And Vanessa even uses this as a threat to try to convince Freddy to give us up when he's in parts in service. You know, when his like head is disconnected and we have to reconnect it. So, a kid wearing a Monty mask after the canon ending of Security Breach would explain a lot. It would make a lot of sense. It would also explain the reason why Afton's body isn't burnt horrifically like it's supposed to be in the Man in Room 1280 in FNAF 9, because like that he hasn't done that yet. I mean, it also explains why it's called Burn Trap. At least we know he didn't escape the FNAF 6 pizzeria like everyone thought he had though, right? And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was actually a pretty dividing point among FNAF fans and theorists alike. Some thought that it was Afton in hell, others thought that it was a coma, but we now have a definitive answer. Assuming it does take place between Security Breach and FNAF 6, as the release of the games would indicate, it would actually mean that Ultimate Custom Night is what Burn Trap is seeing while unconscious in the recharge station. Perhaps it's him keeping himself from dying in the recharge station, like a mind kind of fight thing, like whenever a main character dies in a show and they have to fight back to get to their body. Yeah, that kind of thing. And we don't actually see him wake up until he beats 50-20 mode, and then he comes after us like we see in the true ending to the game. So basically, we get down there, and as soon as we activate it, he beats 50-20 mode. This actually makes sense given that Scrap Trap is in Ultimate Custom Night, since this would sort of be like a nightmare sequence with Scrap Trap serving as what William is dealing with in these moments, or I guess his misdeeds, or his wickedness made of flesh, as Nightmare puts it. But you know, the whole aftermath of the FNAF 6 fire, and then returning to that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, either because of like Charlotte being there and he wanted to kill her, or maybe just some other thing that Henry had to do to actually lure Afton back. We don't actually know what that was, but either way, he had to deal with it, and it makes sense as to why now. And it's 6 brothers. Now this is something that Matt had actually talked about in his recent FNAF Theory video that went out on January 1st, 2022. However, this is something I have been calling for ages. Ever since we learned Gregory's name, ever since that Funko statue was leaked, I have been saying that their relationship is very brotherly. It was awfully similar to Michael and the crying child. Especially when the older brother is represented by, or maybe even now possessing, the Glamrock Freddy animatronic, when it was a version of a Freddy animatronic that killed his little brother in the first place. And before you get all mad at me saying, oh no, that was Fredbear. Fredbear is a version of Freddy, okay? Go away. Fredbear is literally a version of Freddy. Back off. The fact that this is so solid after the game comes out, it kind of explains that what happened actually did happen. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that now we're trying to make up for it, to reconcile. And if Gregory ends up actually being a robot crying child, you all owe me a coffee. Because I've been calling that one for ages too. I have been saying that for so long and so many people got mad at me. But look at this, MatPat says it and I saw no hate comments on the top, at the top comments, okay, on that video. I saw no hate. Halfway through into number 5, the FNAF 6 Fire. FNAF 6 acted as the narrative ending for many animatronics. The fun times in Molten Freddy, the puppet inside of Lefty, Scrap Baby, and even us as Michael Afton. But the secret true ending to this game actually shows us the aftermath of this fire. We see the aftermath of FNAF 3's Fire in Sister Location's final cutscene, with Springtrap popping out of the ruins of Fazerquest, and this time around we learn about the third last game's fire in this ending. Since, as MatPat pointed out in his recent theory, as well as many people have pointed out in the comments of various videos and Reddit posts, the pizzeria you're in for this secret ending looks a hell of a lot like the one that we make, or like the base for the one we make in Pizzeria Simulator. And since it burns down, basically it doesn't matter which one you made, this is what it would burn down to. Which honestly explains why William was in the recharge station. Okay, they didn't actually have to move his body. Which actually, it makes sense. Finally, something in this godforsaken series makes sense. Something makes sense in a FNAF game, praise the Lord. But this also means that he hasn't been taken to the hospital yet for the man in room 1280 to occur. This idea that this is the FNAF 6 pizzeria also ends up solidifying when you see that the blob is like the new Ennard, with all of the different animatronics from FNAF 6 present when you actually like take a look closer and even like clip inside of it. There's a video for it. Many people have done this on YouTube, but you can like see the Scrap Baby mask, you can see the puppet's mask. Yeah, combine this with, you know, the fact that Springtrap is here, or I guess Burn Trap or Scrap Trap, whatever, okay? The fact that William in some form of animatronic Golden Bunny is here, and you get an explanation for what happened after the FNAF 6 fire. In at 4, Princess Quest. The inclusion of Princess Quest in the Help Wanted mobile port is a pretty little minigame added since they couldn't really include the full Glitchtrap and 16 tapes thing in a phone game. So they added Princess Quest's 16 braziers, and then they all came together to form a form of Glitchtrap at the end. This seemed like a simple way to include everything when it first came out, but now we have a whole new lease on this idea. Since, with Security Breach, the way to get the best ending, even though it's not canon, is through these Princess Quest arcade machines. But they've been ported from a mobile game into arcade cabinets. We learn this in one of the various lore duffel bags that we can find throughout the game. One in Bonnie Bowl says that they ported Princess Quest 1 from an old mobile game. Why port to arcade? It's a very good question, but these Princess Quest games are really what's holding Vanessa back from reclaiming her body, which we see happen in the best ending, hence why it's the best ending. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, spirits. One of the major issues with FNAF for some is the inconsistency of the whole spirits are real, but they aren't the ones doing the actual possession thing. Since in FNAF 3's minigames we see the physical spirits of the original 5 missing children, and then in Fazerquest, we learn that agony and emotions are what actually cause possession in this world. So how could there be those actual physical spirits if it was just their emotions causing the suits to move? And while originally we might have just chalked it up to maybe there being other emotions, or even just like William hallucinating, with Security Breach and specifically the rooftop ending, I think we have a better idea. Since in the rooftop ending we end up seeing Vanny dead on the ground, and then we unmask her and it reveals Vanessa. And then a couple seconds later we see Vanessa looking down at her body on top of the building, just watching. herself. Yeah, that's definitely not a problem at all. Thanks, Scott. This could mean, though, that there are only spirits when the person regrets what they've done. Since the kids in the original suits terrorized so many others, maybe they ended up actually feeling bad about it, even though they couldn't really control it because it was their emotions controlling the suits. But maybe they still felt bad about what was going on, and then that's why they had spirits. Regret. It's a powerful thing. Penultimately, in at number 2, the blob. Okay, so what I'm talking about here, as opposed to the FNAF 6 ending, which I mentioned before, is not what the blob is meant to do, but something else entirely. Here, I'm explaining that the blob in this game actually explains the blob of tentacle goo that comprises Baby, introduced in the final few Fazerquest books. This blob actually explains why that whole thing was introduced and explored and why it happened. Because it's setting up yet another f***ing antagonist for the future of the FNAF games. As long as the next owner of the IP wants to go in that direction, that is. Because now, they got 3. They can go with William, they can go with Vanny, or they can go with the blob, or hell, they can go backwards and make an entirely new character for all we know. And even if they don't want to go that way, they can wrap up William's story first and then move on to someone else. Like, I mean, Scott in Steel Wool did leave a death animation for William unused in the files, and I doubt that it's going to be used for a potential DLC. Because first we need a few updates for the game. But there's no way that they wouldn't capitalize on an obscure ending like that for another game. Because, like, there's no way that they would officially kill William off. I want it to happen, but it's not gonna happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Scott's, like, been working with the person taking over for the endings of this game to see which one fits where they want to go next the best. Hence why there are so many endings. Scott was like, okay, pick one. Actually, no, I doubt that. I feel like Scott was like, this is the true ending. You gotta work with this. But here are other ones to help guide you. And finally, in at number 1, the Help Wanted ending. Now, while the whole Glitchtrap shouldn't be possible thing is a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to explore, I think that Security Breach, and more so the Princess Quest ending, perfectly explains the Help Wanted ending. You need to beat the first game, then you beat the second game, and then you choose the Vanny ending, and instead of pushing the button to disassemble Vanny, you play the third Princess Quest game. This will result in the player actually saving Vanessa as long as you beat the third one, and then finding Vanny's mask on the floor. But how did that really save Vanessa, you ask? Well, actually, it's fairly simple. Help Wanted. If you've seen any of my videos where I discuss the endings of Help Wanted and how when we complete that puzzle in the final battle, we get locked behind a door, you'll know that I said that that's us being distracted so that William has an opportunity to actually shut us away in our own mind. So if we do the thing that we do to actually beat him when he's attacking us, we're just distracted enough so that he wins even more. And that he does. But this Princess Quest ending actually really proves me right. Since the end of Princess Quest 3, you open a giant door with a large keyhole surrounded by glitching cracks and purple stuff. And in Help Wanted, we get sealed behind a giant door with a large keyhole with cracks around it and even handprints on the inside. This with the obvious connection via Princess Quest to Help Wanted, because, you know, Princess Quest was the mobile version of the 16 tapes. This is us releasing the player from Help Wanted, who consequentially ends up being Vanessa from the wall that Afton set up, since after this door closes we see her mask on the floor, and even sit on a hill with Vanessa and Freddy's head, which is a whole other can of worms, which makes MatPat think that Gregory is crying child, Freddy is Mike, and that Vanessa is Elizabeth Afton, which we've been calling for months. I feel like we've been calling that for a year, but...